This is one of the first of my last Kol Nidre sermon as your rabbi. When Moses spoke his final words to the Israelites, he knew it was the last of his lasts. The rabbis imagined this moment in Midrash Ptirat Moshe, a depiction of his emotion and struggle in facing the limits of life and leadership. It's normal to second guess whether to accept limitations on what you can do for yourself, for your nation. But Moses was also afraid of a time would come when people would yearn. They would yearn for a king, someone more powerful, glamorous, commanding, and well-spoken than him. He'd previously warned them of such yearning, stating that if they determined to accept the king must know our Torah and abide by its principles. And if you glorify a leader as a monarch, they'd better have earned such glory through demonstrations of fairness, judiciousness, restraint. In our Yom Kippur morning Torah reading, Moses insists that their inheritance is not a ruler, but rules. Choose life, he says, life over death, blessing over curse. And if they ever forgot, he instructed them to set up boulders on a mountain, coat them with plaster, and inscribe the Torah's teachings in plain words. Emblazon upon them their noblest virtues, he said. Make it permanent and prominent. Do not forget who you are. Kol Nidre similarly demands that we remember who we are. Yom Kippur strips us bare. It is raw, unsettling, and clarifying. Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel taught about the pachad, the trembling fear one has when Yom Kippur approaches. Not paralyzing fear, but one that pierces through our excuses and forces deep honesty. He recalled what really changed my life and shaped my character each year were the few hours before Yom Kippur. Fear and trembling, great pachad. To Heschel, the hours of Kol Nidre were decisive moments when you knew you were standing before the Holy One. I feel such pachad. Not fear as weakness, fear as readiness. The moment that shreds me on this holiday is not Kol Nidre at the beginning. It occurs at the end when the last Tekiah Gedolah is blasted late tomorrow afternoon. How late? I don't know. No doubt, by this time in the High Holy Days, we know the shofar is not meant as sweet background music. The medieval commentator Maimonides wrote that the shofar was meant to pierce, to rouse, to shake us from indifference and turn us toward compassion, and that's hard work. Think about how many of us have witnessed rage and provocation and regretted staying silent when we should have spoken. But silence in the face of cruelty enters harsher terrain. At such times, silence feels like complicity. Yet the Tekiah Gedolah demands of us, resist. Be a human shofar. Remember who you are and for what you stand. Let me tell you about a human shofar. A human shofar about whom I learned just 3 weeks ago. I was for the first time in Athens, Greece, outside the metropolis cathedral where there is a statue of Archbishop Damaskinos. During the Nazi occupation, when Jews were being targeted for hate and deported, most leaders stayed silent. Damaskinos did not. My son Zachary, my wife Joni, and I were standing before his statue when we learned that in the face of authoritarian Nazi rulers, he declared to them that the holy religion of Christianity does not recognize superior or inferior races or religions. Before God, there's only one category: free people and those who are not free. He followed up by ordering the priests in his charge to issue false baptismal certificates to save Jews, not to convert them or to manipulate them. Rather, he saved thousands of people this way, aligning his courageous words with actions of defiance. When the SS commander threatened the archbishop at gunpoint, Damascus replied, "According to our tradition, clergy are not to be shot. To overrule me, you will have to hang me in accordance." Friends, that's not just conscience. That is resistance. That is a man piercing the silence when anything other than silence or acquiescence was scarce. Judaism has always taught resistance. In every generation, we are taught to see ourselves as escaping oppression. And in Hebrew, we have many words for resistance. Lahitnaged, to oppose, as Damascus opposed the Nazis. Lahitafek, to restrain one's impulses, as we do during these days of awe. But in this respect, lahitafek meant resisting acts of vengeance against people who've wronged us. La'amod bifnei, to stand firm under pressure, enduring beyond bullets and threats, showing one's enemies that their cause is larger than defeating one man. But we know what this looks like from universal examples that go far beyond the borders of Judaism. I think tonight of Malala Yousafzai, who defied the Taliban for the sake of girls' education. And she's just one of many young leaders whose resistance we should admire. We think of Rosa Parks refusing to move and not allowing segregation on buses to degrade her anymore. I think tonight of Senator John McCain, first withstanding torture as a prisoner of war in Vietnam, and later pushing back against vehement political pressure to abandon health care for millions of people. I praise his act of resistance tonight of all nights. Tonight, though, who is really on my mind is Daniel Pearl, the American Jewish journalist murdered in 2002. His final words to his al-Qaeda captors were, "I am Jewish, my father's Jewish, my mother's Jewish, I am Jewish." He resisted their cruelty not with a weapon, but with his own moral clarity, defiance his killers could not erase. And I got privileged earlier in my career to meet his parents, Ruth and Judah Pearl. They spoke at a synagogue I served in Virginia, and we spent some time together before. They shared with me how Daniel's identity nourished him, how proud he was to be Jewish, proud of his country in America, proud to be connected to Israel. And as far as I'm concerned, he was a human shofar. He was saying, my Judaism will outlive and outmaneuver your insidious hatred and terror. My Judaism will stand up to bring compassion to all in need. If you've been watching the protests occurring fairly regularly now in the modern state of Israel, you'll see that same tone of defiance and resistance expressed by thousands of Israelis in the streets of cities and en masse in Hostage Square. They are crying out that their faith demands as one of its highest obligations the redemption of captives. They are saying, of course we want Hamas to not be in power, but they are also looking to have faith in the clarity of what Israel's war strategy is. They have every right to protest, to want the most humane choices to be made, to end suffering, hunger, squalor, and a growing humanitarian crisis in Gaza, alongside the heartbreak, sadness, hurt, and pain of having one's loved ones still be in Hamas's hands. Now, our children have every right to be impressed as they confess to me how much they are moved by Israeli resistance. They may not realize that Israel is the only place in the Middle East that allows such resistance, but they have every right to hear and see those protests and identify with them as something truly Jewish. I've been working with teens for 40 years. the ones I teach and meet today in our community, few of them know of Daniel Pearl. Not one of them would know of Archbishop Damaskinos. But they know Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. They know Tarana Burke, founder of the Me Too movement. They know Volodymyr Zelensky standing with Ukrainian people to resist the encroachment of authoritarianism by Russia. The kids I meet as a rabbi today, they want a free future more free of brutality than the present that we're giving them. And as a rabbi, I'm here to tell you, Judaism demands that we not shut our teens down. Rather, we should join them in resistance. Resistance to a growingly unsafe culture that makes excuses for brutality and sides with strong men rather than strong moral values. The Talmud teaches us 613 morally valued commandments. Theologian and survivor of the Holocaust, Emil Fackenheim, added a 614th commandment, to not give Hitler a posthumous victory by abandoning Judaism. Tonight, I suggest a 615th. When cruelty reigns, when people turn to kings instead of conscience, when anything but silence and acquiescence is cause for suspicion, leading to arrest, resist. להתנגד, להתאפק, לעמוד בפני. The truth is that Daniel Pearl didn't begin and end his comments by stating his Jewish lineage. He continued. He said, I'm Jewish, and I'm from Encino, California. On my father's side, our family is Zionist. My father is Jewish. My mother is Jewish. I'm Jewish. We make visits to Israel. We have loved ones in Bnei Brak. When I had some time alone with Daniel's parents, they said his last words were not of despair. They were a call to resistance. He was proclaiming his identity, his hope, his connection to Israel. He was saying to his captors, kill a person, but you will not kill his faith or the people that will survive him. The more I learned after his death about Daniel's life, who he was, what he cared about, the more I realized he could have been someone who'd have been a friend of mine at Jewish summer camp. Like me, his Judaism was built not precisely on religion and ritual, but on community, peoplehood, song, hope, and yes, Israel. I want that to be a part of what we know in this congregation. At Mishkan Or, I want each of us to hear in this year's final Tekiah Gedola a soaring sound meant for us personally. Let it proclaim, I am Jewish. I am part of a Jewish family. I'm part of a community determined to make its own destiny. I am part of a people who resist cruelty and oppression. Truly, truly, friends, it's my prayer tonight, the same one for every pulpit I've ever served. The college campuses, the student pulpits, previous congregations in Maryland and Virginia, and the 2 history-making congregations I have served in Cleveland. I hope each of us, all of us, realize that Tekiah, the world needs our moral clarity, our ability and willingness as Jews to name hatred and systems of injustice. And Shevarim, when we witness brokenness, we take it personally. We know what it is to be broken, embittered, and nevertheless, Trua, there is urgency. We live in an age when it has never been more critical to resist what is immoral and wrong from what is right and just and fair. It's a privilege, really. I am so proud to be Jewish and to see the blessings that we have for being alive. We, all of us, can be students of history, even if novices to Judaism. But let us all be drawn to examples of extraordinary human resilience. Resistors such as Archbishop Damaskinos and Daniel Pearl, Rosa Parks, Tarana Burke, Malala. When we resist, when we see what we know to be cruel, and we speak out, our words will echo those of Congressman John Lewis and Senator John McCain and Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg and Ukrainian leader Volodymyr Zelensky and Nelson Mandela, who taught us That freedom is not just throwing shackles off ourselves, it is living in a way that respects and enhances the freedom of others. This is not going to be a popular cause. Fear, pachad, it will tempt us to run and hide. They'll say it's partisan. And I'll say what I believe, that the idea that Judaism at its core is not about fighting authoritarianism or infringements on freedoms and oppression of human beings, that, friends, is a lie. On this evening of Kol Nidre, whatever fearful names we can be called, pachad just comes with the territory. But it should not stop us thinking and making the year to come be the one that we resisted the instinct to abide by cruelty. Instead, let it be a year we opened our heart with compassion for human beings. May silence, fear, and complicity be no more, and may resistance do the talking for us. Then we can do what Judaism is based on. Transform the world as it is to the world we know it can be. Ken yehi ratzon. Let's do this. With God's help, let's do this.